everyone. My name is Helen Nguyen, your host for Wellness Wednesday with 3W, our podcast from 3W Medical for Women. Today we have a really special guest and a dear friend of mine. I actually feel really old interviewing him because he used to be a student of mine, but we have Hiep with us today. He's a new volunteer here at the clinic. He's a certified PA, right, Hiep?
I am, yes.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, how long ago you got certified, and have you been enjoying your time here at 3W?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Hiep. I recently graduated from PA school. PA stands for Physician Assistant.
Yeah.
No apostrophe S.
Yeah.
But I decided to go into this route because I love everything medical, everything science. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the science that helps people kind of like right up front. And growing up being an underserved individual myself and from an underserved family, I always wanted to give back to underserved communities. So healthcare was one of the things that limited a lot that I could do. So I decided to go into healthcare and then bring all the knowledge I had and developed to the underserved community. Mm-hmm. So that's why I decided to go that route. Yeah. And I decided to volunteer here mainly because I want to learn. Women's health is actually one of my weakest points in school. So I've always take challenges head on. So putting myself in 3W really helps me to learn that. And I've learned a lot.
Awesome.
I've enjoyed every single second of it. It's helpful for me to be a male provider, especially. Mm-hmm. So it's not just the science and the medical knowledge. It's also the interactions with patients, especially when we're different in terms of biological genders and sex and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, awesome. Well, there's one thing that we've all really enjoyed here about Hiep is, he says that he's brand new and he has still a lot to learn, but he is probably one of our brightest medical volunteers that we've had. And we've just so enjoyed him being here. We want to actually keep him here forever. That's a totally another story. And when you come in and you get to interact with Hiep, what you will get is his genuineness and his heart. He puts everything into what he does, and that has been really evident in what we see in him today. So I wanted you all listeners to get a little piece of who's new to our team. And it just so happens that next week is going to be Thyroid Awareness Week. And so I just thought, he's fresh out and he's probably going to know more about this and be eager to talk about this. So we're going to be talking about thyroid. Where is it? What is it? And Hiep's going to navigate us through that. So Hiep, what is a thyroid? Where is it located? And why is it important for us to have?
Yeah, thyroid is a lot more important than most people think.
Okay.
It's one of the differential diagnoses that we keep in our minds when we see patients, especially in primary care, kind of the directions that I'm heading.
Yeah.
So kind of as the beginning, to start from the beginning, a thyroid is a gland. And the gland is something that secretes certain molecules or hormones that tells some or all of the body to do certain things. Oh. So the thyroid is a gland that sits right in your neck, kind of in the front of your neck where your throat is. And for males, if you find your Adam's apple and go 2 fingers width down, that's kind of where the thyroid sits. And for women not having an Adam's apple, I usually say it's kind of like along the same plane as where your shoulder is.
Clavicle?
Yeah, your clavicle area. Okay. Right there. Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much wherever you feel like a hard spot on your throat. A little bit below that, you'll find the thyroid gland.
Okay.
The shape of it looks like a butterfly. Pretty much that's most often the description that like anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a butterfly-shaped gland.
Okay.
It's located in your neck. Yeah.
Okay.
It sits right in front of your vocal cord and your throat.
How does a physician check your thyroid? And why do they need to check your thyroid the way they do?
Yeah. So before I answer that, kind of going back to your question, why is it important?
Yeah. Yes.
As I mentioned, it's a gland, right? So it tells the body to do certain things. And the thyroid's actually in charge of the body's metabolism. And in a way, yeah. So it kind of tells, your gut is kind of like the site of where all the breakdown happens, all the absorption, but the thyroid kind of tells the gut like how much you need to be working or how less you need to, work. So a lot of times patients who have thyroid problems, they feel like fatigue, hot or cold intolerance. Their skin is either brittle or they sweating a lot. So it kind of plays a hand in a lot of your organ systems. And I can talk a little bit more about that too.
Wow.
As well.
I had no idea that it was so important.
Yeah, it is very important.
It's not a very talked about gland.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's not really talked much about because there's obviously other things that affects your health.
Yes.
The thyroid kind of is the person standing in the background saying you should do this or you should do that.
Like a conductor.
In a way, yeah. In a way.
Okay.
Yeah. And when it comes to having issues with your thyroid, so thyroid produces hormones that tells the body what to do. Sometimes it's working too hard and produces too much thyroid hormones, or it's working too little and not produce enough. Okay. And that affects the body in different ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
So going back to my question again, so why is it important for a provider to check during I remember a well woman exam, Dr. Rutherford checking if my thyroid feels healthy. Why was it important for her to check that?
Yeah, it's really important, especially in any primary care as well, is to understand how the rest of the body is working. Okay. Like being the conductor, right? If one of the violinist or if an instrument is going wrong, is it because the person playing the instrument is messing up, or is it the conductor messing up?
Very good.
We always want to figure out what's the source of our problem. Yeah. And sometimes the thyroid being a hand in a lot of things, we would like to check the thyroid. And a lot of times, one of your questions is how do we check thyroid problems? Is we can do a physical exam, like you mentioned with Dr. Rutherford. The technique that we were taught to do in school is to place both of our hands using the tips of our fingers and kind of placing it about maybe a centimeter or two apart from each other, just placing it right where we anticipate the thyroid to be. Okay. And we ask the patient to swallow. Yes, I remember that. She goes, swallow, and then she feels it moving, right? Exactly. Okay. So that movement that happens when you swallow, it helps us to kind of, identify the thyroid a little bit and kind of figure, are there any nodules on it? Is there any mass abnormalities on it? Is it big? Is it small? Usually when it's small, we probably won't feel it. Generally, a normal thyroid, we won't feel much. But when it's large, we can tell it's large. Or if there's something on it that's not supposed to be there, we can feel it when you swallow. Because when you swallow, it moves the thyroid gland up and down. And that's the movement that we ask. So interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting. For those of you who don't know, we get a lot of volunteers, medical volunteers, pre-med students, nursing students that just want to try the medical field out, but don't want to put too much work into it, but figuring out where they land in the medical world. And I remember having my physical exam here, and Dr. Rutherford, who is such a teacher at heart, she checked my thyroid and she goes, oh, I could feel that really well, and then we had a volunteer in the room with me, and she goes, can she feel your thyroid too? And then she stood behind me and felt my thyroid while Dr. Rutherford stood in front of me and she swallowed so I can feel what she was feeling, and I thought that was such a fun patient experience because then we're engaged in the healthcare together. And I think that's one of the things that makes 3W unique is that there's no billing involved. There's no time constraints. You get an hour-long conversation with a medical provider, but you also get to be educated about your healthcare. So it just reminds me of a fun experience I had here. So can there be problems that are detected? Like you said, there can be bumps on your thyroid. And what does that mean when you detect that? Yeah, so one of the common problems of the thyroid is that it's not working well enough. Okay. We see this actually a lot in women compared to men, is that they have low production of thyroid hormone, which they call hypothyroidism.
Okay.
And for that condition, usually patients will feel fatigue. They will have cold intolerance, meaning they feel cold all the time. Their skin is kind of dry and coarse. Their hair can become really thin and brittle. It's because they're not producing enough hormones to break down all the nutrients that's needed to make all those things well and healthy.
Okay.
So we don't really understand why exactly it happens more in women, potentially some other hormone regulations, but we see that often most in women over men.
Okay.
On the other end, the thyroid is working too hard. It's producing too much hormones. So going to the gut, it's breaking down too much nutrient. It's overworking itself.
Okay.
So in like basic science, they teach us like when we break down stuff, we kind of create energy or we use energy. So oftentimes when you work too much, you're kind of creating energy. The gut is breaking down those nutrients, but those nutrients are being used to give your body energy, right? So you can have a lot of warmth feeling. You feel heat a lot. They call it heat intolerance. You feel hot all the time. Kind of like hot flashes maybe, but
I was just thinking
on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I was just thinking of like women going through menopause is what that comes to mind.
Yeah, and with the whole breakdown in the metabolism, it affects a patient's weight a lot. So if you have a low functioning thyroid, you can have weight gain. And if you have a hyperfunctioning thyroid, you can have weight loss because everything is being broken down.
Wow.
So it plays a hand in a lot of things.
Yeah.
So that's why we check it. And how do we check it? So most oftentimes, I learned that 90% of diagnosis can be done through history. You tell me you feel cold a lot. You feel you're fatigued a lot. And that's one of the things that will help us suspect it could be thyroid. Right? But most oftentimes we do that physical exam that we kind of just talked about is to see if there's any enlargement on the thyroid. Is there any masses on there, like abnormal growth? Most organs in our bodies regenerate in a way that it kind of get rid of old cells and then kind of new cells. And that's kind of where like overgrowth can happen sometimes. So that's why we want to check if there's a mass there. Is it getting bigger? Because sometimes when it's getting bigger, it could mean that it's working too much or it's not working enough. Kind of a balance there. Yeah.
Everything in moderation, right? That's
right.
That's kind of where we want to hit.
Exactly.
Gosh, our bodies are interesting.
It is. That's why I love it so much. And that's why I went into that field.
Yeah.
But the thyroid, there's the hormones that it produces. We can actually measure that. So if there's a marker that we can test to show certainty that there's something going wrong or not, we do a blood test. We measure thyroid hormones.
Okay.
But in medical literature and today's standard of care, we actually test for something called TSH, which is the thyroid stimulating hormone.
Yes.
And what's interesting is that the TSH actually comes from your brain. It comes from the anterior pituitary gland in your brain, which talks to your thyroid gland. And once that TSH gets to your thyroid, it tells the thyroid to either produce more thyroid hormones or to stop producing. And there's a lot more science into that, but just keeping it basic, we mostly measure TSH.
Okay.
If the TSH is low, that means because it works on a negative feedback. So if TSH is low, the thyroid hormones supposedly is high because the high level tells the brain, hey, let's stop making at TSH.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes I get thrown off.
No, that made sense. That totally made sense.
So that's why TSH is low.
Okay.
TH, thyroid hormones, being high will tell TSH to be low, and kind of vice versa. If TSH is high, that means there's low TH.
Yes.
Telling the brain, hey, we need more thyroid hormones.
So the brain is like a secret conductor.
Yeah. It's part of the endocrine system, which a lot of other different body organs work in. But yeah, that's how the thyroid works.
That is so fascinating. So,
Yeah.
so what happens, what type of medication do you take if you have hypo or hyper? And it's supposed to balance that out, correct? That the point of the medication is to get it to a middle part again.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we usually monitor TSH.
Okay.
And when someone has hypothyroidism, that means they have high TSH. So they have low thyroid hormones. So we give them medication for that to give them like the actual thyroid hormones.
Okay.
Because when patient takes that means the body's having a lot of hormones in their body, which tells the brain to kind of shut off TSH. And that's how it works usually. So when patient has hypothyroidism, low TH,
yes,
we give them is a medication called levothyroxine. And that's so getting a little bit more complicated. We can talk about the different types of thyroid hormones. There's a T4 and then a T3.
Wow.
It's just how it's molecularly composed. Yeah. And T4 is kind of the primary hormone. Yes. It gets converted to T3. And T3 is actually the thing that's telling the body to do things.
So interesting. So if you didn't get all of that, don't worry, because guess what? Hip's here, and you can make an appointment and come in and talk to him all about your thyroids, because he seems to be very knowledgeable about it. Right. So that is, well, I'm so glad that there's medication out there that helps balance out your thyroid. And it sounds like it's going to be something that you take for the rest of your life.
Actually, if you take it in a way that your TSH is now back to normal.
Oh, so it can level back out.
You can kind of, reduce the amount you take. For oftentimes, patient can have really high TSH level. We give them levothyroxine, and the body does what it does, and we check the TSH on a regular basis to make sure that it's responding. If it's going down, then we can reduce the dosage,
the medication,
or kind of playing along and working with patients to see like what's best for them. Because if your thyroid is fine, what's the need for taking this medication?
Got it.
So that argument is good for some medication, not all, but
So that's something you're going to have to monitor if you do get put on medication with your provider, and monitor that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the biggest thing is, how do the patients feel?
Yes. Yeah.
So the thyroid affects how patients feel a lot. So being on medication, we want to make sure patients feel comfortable in a way that they find most tolerable. Yeah.
So not approaching it as a cookie cutter approach, right? Every individual's body is going to respond to the medication differently. And I think that's something that it's one of our core values here at 3W is seeing the individual as, and the issues that they come in with their healthcare as something very unique to them. And how do we walk alongside you and partner with you to figure it out? Not just dismissing it and being like, oh, because here's the Band-Aid solution, right?
Exactly. That's at least my hope in my scope of practice, hopefully. And one day it's more about what's causing it rather than putting a Band-Aid over it.
Okay. So how do you keep your thyroid healthy? Is there anything that you can do, for an everyday individual to make sure their thyroid is functioning well?
Yeah.
Is there anything you can eat or drink,
Yeah, actually, I didn't know the answers to this question, so I spent a little time looking it up. And I found mostly dietary recommendations online, especially for those who have low thyroid function, hypothyroidism. Okay. And you remember when I talked about the conversion of T4 to T3? Iodine is that element that kind of plays a role into it. So if you eat food that has some iodine in it, it can help the conversion of T4 to T3. I looked up a list to say like roasted seaweed, salted nuts, baked fish, and then something new to me is frozen yogurt.
Wow.
So, interesting. So
all yummy things.
And if you think about on the other spectrum, when you have too much thyroid, that point is where we kind of go to that T4, T3 conversion again, is trying to prevent that conversion if you have too much thyroid hormones. But oftentimes there's medication for that. And oftentimes with high level of thyroidism, heart rate can be a little high. So we want to make sure that we take care of the heart first as well. And then while we're looking for the cause of it, usually when if it's the thyroid, then we give medication to reduce the conversion.
Wow. So fascinating. And how everything just connects and plays off of each other and talks to each other. So interesting.
Yeah.
The human body.
It's amazing.
Fascinating thing, right? Well, thank you so much for your time. I hope our listeners learned a little bit more about thyroid and how to keep yours healthy. If you have any concerns about your thyroid, please come in. We can do a quick exam for you and talk to you more about that. For listeners that have been here, tell us about your experience getting your thyroid checked. We always love to hear about how we did. So please visit our website for more information on how you can make an appointment, on how you can reach out to folks like Hiep, Dr. Rutherford, who can, sit down with you and dive a little bit deeper. So our website is 3 medical.org. So that's 3wmedical.org, or simply give us a call and make an appointment at 206-588-0311. Again, that's 206-588-0311. So thank you again, Hiep, for joining me on this podcast. We hope to hear again from you soon on other topics that you might be interested in. If you have any questions for Hiep, please send me an email and I'll get it to him directly. So until next time, be safe and be well. Thank you so much, guys.